Before getting into the video, I advise everyone to watch at their own discretion, as this does talk about the topic of sexual abuse and this may be a trigger. What up, vocal gang? It's your girl Kiera, which I'm sure you already knew that. And just coming at you guys real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on the topic. I just want to hit 4 main points and then move on. I want to talk about the victims. Second, I want to talk about the parents. Third, I want to talk about R. Kelly, and then I want to be able to share my story with y'all. Just like 99.9% of the world is watching or has watched Surviving R. Kelly. First of all, I really want to say how much I commend all those women, from his ex-wife to the backup singer to the young girls in between. Too often, things like this is swept under the rug. For some odd reason, we like to think that this does not exist, or how could it happen to my daughter, my niece, my nephew, and it just baffles me as to why people just continuously ignore this type of thing. I really want to congratulate these women for standing up for themselves and speaking their truth. Sometimes when you're in a family that's like, what happens in this house stays in this house, you feel like you have no voice and you can't really speak on how you feel, what you're going through. And it's very, very sad, but more often than none, it happens, and it continuously happens. The parents, I have a question in regards to, where were you guys when your child was missing for so long? Like, how can you let your 14, 15, 16-year-old daughter grow with this grown man, and then you start to kind of like realize that, hey, I'm starting to talk to my child less. Like, I don't know what's going on with her. I can see how the girls were definitely naive to the situation, because, you know, when you're young, especially when you want to be a superstar, R. Kelly was big in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was the king of R&B. If I'm a 14, 15-year-old girl and I sing myself. So if I was 14, 15 years old and I meet a celebrity, somebody that's idolized, looked up to, that's literally kicking hits out back to back to back, and they come to me or have their people come to me talking about they want my number, or they give me their number, and then when we talk, they're talking about they're selling me this dream. At the time, of course, I'm gonna be like, you know, shit, okay. For the parents, when you have that gut feeling like something isn't right in regards to my child or my children, why didn't y'all try to pull them away from that? Why didn't y'all get them out of that? You know what I'm saying? Brainwashing is a real thing. It can happen. It has happened. It did happen. I just have so many questions for the parents, because that just doesn't make sense. When you start to see these patterns, I feel like a red flag should go off in your head to tell you, like, something is not right. Let me go to my child. Because from my understanding, based off the series, a lot of these parents had contact, if not with their child, they had a way to get in contact with R. Kelly. I'm confused. I just go off what I personally would like or would have liked if I was in that situation. We are going to discuss R. Kelly. So this is another big elephant in the room, especially in the Black community. Hurt people, hurting people. So if you didn't know, R. Kelly and his brother were sexually abused as children. And I feel like with those two, it's the perfect example of the two different outcomes of that type of situation. His brother came out fine. He didn't turn into like a predator or anything like that. You know, he dealt with it however he dealt with it. R. Kelly, on the other hand, he dealt with it in the opposite way. What people have to realize is that sometimes people act out when they've been sexually abused. And I've been sexually abused and I acted out. It wasn't in that way, but I used to be a runaway. It transpired and it rolled over into my intimate relationships, and it got to a point where I couldn't even be intimate with whom I was with because it was affecting me to that point. It wasn't until 2017 that I started to take therapy seriously, because I had been to 3 different therapists before I finally realized that, oh shit, this is really turning into something that it shouldn't, and it's really affecting me. Unfortunately, R. Kelly hasn't gotten the help that he needs. And in a sense, he is a victim. He is a victim in that regard. He's not a victim in the regard of doing what he has done or is doing to those girls, but in regards to his childhood and him acting out basically what was done to him, that sense of control, he is definitely a victim. As a child, when you get abused or sexually abused or whatever, you have to understand you are a child. You stay in a child's place, correct? So when you experience those things, you don't really know how to feel. You don't really know how to channel that energy, and you don't have a sense of control because you are a child. So when you get older and you do start to grow and have responsibilities and start to have a sense of control, it can either go left or it can go right. And in R. Kelly's case, it just turned out wrong. That is the only thing that I can say that I feel sorry for him about, is what he went through and how it's being handled. And I sincerely hope that everybody in the situation gets the peace that they not only need, but they ultimately deserve. In my R. Kelly experience, when I was 9 years old, me and my brother, we used to share a room, and the middle room in the house was my mom's like work room, her office. And so me and my brother, we used to share a room. We had bunk beds. I slept at the top, my brother slept at the bottom. So when I got older, I think when I turned 9 or not long after I turned 9, my mom was like, well, you know, you can have your own room. I'm going to take the stuff out of the office and you're going to be able to stay in there. I'm like, all right, cool. You know, when you're kind of like comfortable and you're used to like doing something or being in a certain area, so it kind of takes you time to like back away from it or whatever the case may be, or get comfortable. For me, it was getting comfortable on my own in my own room. So even though I had my own room, sometimes I would still sleep in the room with my brother. I would still sleep on the top bunk because that's just what I was used to. And I used to be very, very terrified of the dark. So that was another reason why I still slept in the room with him, because it was just a comfort thing. My grandfather had ended up moving in the house. Now, mind you, the only memory I had of my grandfather was a picture of the Stevens family, and I was sitting on his lap. So as a kid, I was curious. I've always been pretty curious about things and people. And when he came, I was excited because I was like, this is my grandfather at the time. My grandpa, he stayed in Chicago, and then my granddad, who was my great-grandfather, he was in Indiana. So the closest grandfather that I had was the one that was where I was at. One night, I remember like sleeping in the room with my brother, and because my grandfather had took over the top bunk, I was sleeping in bed with my brother. I remember because my brother was laying to the right of me, and my granddad was laying, he was to the left of me. He wasn't laying down, he was at the table. And this is when like computers were really starting to like pop. So he had like a little like those big face desktop computers. It was on the table, and he was sitting right next to me on his computer. I want to say it was my flannel pajamas, so that means it was like wintertime or whatever. So I just remember laying in the bed, and my head was kind of turned this way, and he was over here, so he couldn't really like see my eyes or whatever. And I just remember I felt his hand touch my, touch my breasts. And at the time, me being 9, I didn't really understand. And so I was just like, I don't know, like I opened my eyes, but like I said, he couldn't see me open my eyes. Honestly, did not know what was happening. I didn't understand. I did not know what was going on. And I just laid there because I felt like if I moved, I really felt like if I moved, I was gonna get in trouble. So I laid there, and it happened more than once. Another time that it happened was when I think this time I had on my Spice Girls nightgown, and this time it escalated to him putting his hands in my pants. And yeah. Over time, it low-key graduated. I feel like if he hadn't moved out when he did, I feel like he would have raped me. There was a time I came home from school and he had asked me to give him a kiss on the cheek, right? And so when I was going to give him a kiss on the cheek, he turned real fast and ended up kissing me on the lips, and he tried to put his tongue in my mouth. And it was so disgusting. All this stuff is starting to like... I think I had fell asleep. There was nobody at the house. And I had fell asleep on the top bunk. And I just remember him like hopping on top of the bed, hopping on top of me. He still had his clothes on, but I remember him like basically hunching me, and I tried to get him to get off of me, but he wouldn't, and he didn't get off of me until he basically had an orgasm. And this is probably the first time that I'm really actually saying this stuff out loud. I didn't come out about this until I was 14. Me and my mom had got into it really, really bad, and in the midst of us arguing, I had told her like I was raped, and she didn't believe me. And the reason why I took so long to even tell my mom, I waited till I was like 14 to tell my mom, because I was like, well, she's not gonna believe me. And just like in that moment, she didn't believe me, so nothing else was said about it. So like I said, I used to act out, run away, this, that, and the third. So once my mom got fed up with my shit, she ended up moving me to, or sending me to Indiana to go live with my dad, because if I didn't go with my dad, she was going to send me somewhere else. I don't know. Me and my dad sat down and had a really deep conversation, and he had asked me, he was like, you know, I want to know like why you're acting out, like what's going on, like what's up, like let me know. And he looked me in my eyes and he was like, did somebody do something to you? And I just looked at him and I didn't say anything. And I just remember him like, just starting to cry, and he immediately called my mom because he didn't understand like why nobody said anything, why she didn't tell him. And when he called her, because I remember he called her, it was exactly 11 o'clock at night, and he asked her, he was like, why didn't you say anything? She was like, oh, because I didn't believe her. And that's the exact reason why I didn't say anything, because I knew for a fact she wasn't going to believe me. It really hurt my heart when she said that. And I'm just glad that, you know, I've worked through all of that pain, that hurt, that suffering, and I'm literally like, I'm free, you know what I'm saying? And it feels good to be in the place that I'm at now. And this probably explains, for people who really know me, why I do the things I do in regards to my spirituality, because this is my way of setting myself free and my way of loving myself. Parents, if your child, son or daughter, comes to you and says, somebody is touching me, or somebody has physically, sexually hurt me, please believe them, because the shit out here is real. In Black families, it's time to stop masking the predator or acting like there isn't a sexual predator in the family, because I found out the person who did it to me had did it to somebody else in my family, and I was really upset about that, and it pissed me off, because it's like, how could you guys know that this person is in the family and did it to one person? Y'all think this person wasn't going to do it again? Like, come on. If you are experiencing sexual abuse or abuse period, please get help.